Justice Society of America, issue 2. Geoff Johns writing with Mikkel Yannon on the art. So Helena went back in time, landed next to the Justice Society in the 40s. That's where we left off, issue 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Pete, did you remember that? Because I had to go digging and remember what had happened.
I remembered that. Yeah, I
Okay.
did. I did remember that part.
Okay, I did not, and if I would have kept just reading, it would have, explained itself. But so I went into my, digging through my pile of books to find Justice Society 1.
Because it was.
To remember how she got there.
Yeah, it was the end of November. It was week 5 in November, so it has been a little bit long since issue 1, than the typical month gap.
Because I was like, why is Helena laying on a cot in the 40s? Reminded me. And then it all clicked and it was fine.
Yeah. So she wakes up, she thinks she hears her father's voice, but she doesn't, of course. And she goes to meet the GSA of past, and she's like, "Are you Khalid?" And like, I recognize Judy's father, Jay, and stuff like that.
That's the thing too about this, is we know that Helena's from, they keep saying from now, right? So are we to believe that this Helena is the actual future Catwoman Batman daughter? Or is this another timeline?
Okay, I feel like we have to explain what you meant there, because you kind of glossed over that very quickly. So, in the book, it keeps saying X years from now or X years in the past, right?
Yes.
So, the X years from now, given the way it ends, because it ends what looks like present day with the DC, with Justice League Dark. It's Detective Chimp and Khalid, Dr. Fate. It's the current version of these characters.
Yeah, the last ones that we've seen.
Yeah, and it says now at the end, right? So, which would imply that, at least from her perspective, that she is the future daughter of Batman and Catwoman, which is interesting, especially since we're dealing with Time Masters and we're dealing with the globes and all that, because they're less about multiple Earths and more about different timelines. So, I would suspect that she is the future, but that timeline is going to be erased, and she's going to be this leftover character from it, would be my guess.
Right, because then she talks about she knew Judy Garrick, right?
Yeah, which ties into the
which ties into the Lost Children, which we still don't know how that's going to end or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so is she the daughter of the Earth 2 Batman and Catwoman, and that's the timeline that we're getting? Or is this the current timeline? There's a lot of stuff, and this isn't a slight on the book because it's all part of the mystery. I'm just trying to figure out how all these pieces go together. Well,
to me as well, the idea that this Helena recognizes Judy Garrick also kind of hints at where Stargirl's going, because that would imply that those characters on the island are going to reintegrate into the main world, and that's why this Helena will know who that is, because she's relatively contemporary for her when she was growing up.
Right, because then you add in the Snow Globe too, that we know from Flashpoint Beyond, which was also, plotted by Johns. Because that's how this book opens up, right? With the Snow Globe. And
yeah, the JSA are talking about it in the 40s.
And so I'm just like, man, there's a lot of things going on here, and I like all of it. There's a lot of questions and a lot of timey-wimey shenanigans that I just love. But it just, these are just the questions I had reading the book, which makes for a longer read because I have to stop and think about it.
Yeah, so she talks to Dr. Fate and says, "Oh wait, you're the first Dr. Fate," and he's like, "Yeah, well,
Nelson.
Yeah, first by that name, although the helmet's been going around for a lot longer than that."
Which I was like, oh man, Dr. Fate, a lot like Hawkman. I'd love to see the different versions of Fate before Kent Nelson. What were they up to through time? That'd be cool.
Yeah, but when she touches Dr. Fate kind of transports to and I think he's got a different outfit as well, slightly.
So he jumps a year and a half to the future into Slaughter Swamp, where he's talking to Salem the Witch Girl, who sounds like that's his sidekick.
Yeah, that's his sidekick in a year and a half's time. And they're looking in the swamp, and they run into Grundy. They're looking for Mr. Miracle, but they find Grundy. Well, they find Mr. Miracle as well. He's fighting him, but
looking for Justice Society Dark.
Yes. So they have a bit of a fight. Mr. Miracle gets thrown about a bit in the rain, and then it comes back to where we were, and Fate wakes up, and he's like, "That's weird. It was like I was, he thinks it's a vision or whatever." but he's like, I was in the swamp, I was seeing different things, and seemingly Huntress has like, you know, done something to him, like just, and then we start jumping around in time, and we see 10 years from now, and it shows you like 10-year-old Huntress, which would imply that this Huntress is about to be born in present day DC. That would be the implication of that, because we see Selina at school, like what, you know, with the principal like getting complaints about, you know, whatever Huntress is, whatever Helena Wayne's been up to in school. She's been skipping class and stuff. And yeah, but there's also a tease here. It sets up this thing that this villain that killed the JSA in the future,
the
Stranger, is someone that Helena's been seeing, kind of almost like it's been this mythical person that's been attached to her since she was young. Like she's either possessed, well, not possessed, that's maybe not quite the right term, but
no. Like she's worth keeping an eye on, right? She's marked in some way.
Maybe no. I think it more as like a spirit that's tied to her. Or maybe he's a better way than that.
Because we get to reveal who the Stranger is, and so I'm more key to, for whatever reason, this person has been popping in and checking on Helena.
Oh no, I mean we'll get to who it actually is, but I just mean in this felt more like she's been haunted by someone.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. So
I thought you were saying like of the identity of the thing of the Stranger was like a
no
entity or whatever.
I'm talking about like she's kind of haunted by him, and she's seen him throughout her life, and so she sees him as like a 10-year-old, and then it says. And then we jump to 26 years from now, which is where we left off. That was the main timeline in the first issue. This is right after Helena's went away. Catwoman did that. She sent her back in time, and Catwoman's now left behind with this guy that's killed the JSA, who's Degaton, and we have this confrontation here. So, and it does not end well for Selina, because it then cuts to her gravestone next to Bruce. So, So, yeah, because it also says here that he's like, oh, you finally believe your daughter. This idea that he knew that like Helena knew about him watching her like all these years, and they've just never believed her. They've always thought, oh, this is some boogeyman that you're imagining. You're not seeing someone, which is an interesting idea as well. That they never believed her. That Batman never believed her. That
well, and you would think though with two, because of the timey-wiminess, he doesn't actually exist, right? So of course Batman would be like, I don't know. No, you're seeing things, kid. You know what I mean? Like,
wait, what do you mean timey-wiminess? Explain that.
So what I mean is, because he jumps through time, like Batman hasn't encountered this guy yet, right? Like we don't even know if Batman ever encounters Perdegaton, right?
Oh, sure, but no. What I'm disputing there is you said he doesn't exist. He does exist. He's just disappearing.
Right, but what I mean is like, he doesn't exist to Batman because Batman doesn't know he exists.
Oh, sure, but that's what I mean. But that's very different because I think we have to be specific here with the terminology because
I know what you mean.
Because it'll get very confusing if we start throwing around phrases like that. Because he does exist. He's just jumping through time in different parts of her life. But because he doesn't exist, he disappears and he just leaves. There's no reason for anyone to believe that she's seeing someone.
So. And I don't think this is Perdegaton, right? I feel this is his legacy, right? Because we know Johns loves to write legacy into the Justice Society. So the fact that they just called him Degaton, they didn't give him a first name, or even if Per is a first name, because I'm reading it up, I don't know if that's a title or an actual name. But he feels so much younger than what I'm used to seeing with Perdegaton in a Justice Society, but
sure. Well, so here's the important details that gets brought up though in this confrontation. He mentions that the snow globe that was with Helena was actually basically hid her from him. And he says that made her a blind spot. And whatever he's doing, whatever he's trying to accomplish, this ritual that he's doing by killing all the JSA, he has to kill all of them. So that's why he wants to hunt down Helena and kill her. But this idea that either by accident or intentionally someone was hiding Helena with that snow globe, the idea that because that's like a timey-wimey device, it was distorting, like
around her.
Yeah, her presence to any time travelers or whatever, so I think that's a very intriguing idea, that maybe someone knew that she'd be targeted and gave her this intentionally.
Yep. Well, and still, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a Batman thing, because we know what he knows from dealing with the Flashpoint Beyond stuff.
Are you suggesting that he always knew?
Not always knew, but I think he knows that there's like some tachyon particle-y things here, and he knows that Helena, for whatever reason, or maybe it wasn't him, maybe it's Dr. Batman, right? From the Flashpoint Beyond universe, doing things. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I feel like the fact that Batman is so tied to that globe right now, because of what that globe represents with his dad and the Flashpoint timeline, and what that also means for legacy and all this other stuff.
It could just be an accident, though. It could be a simple thing as he still had that globe and she liked it, and has kept it with her, and that's, But it could also be an intentional thing, though, which is perhaps more interesting, is that at some point maybe Batman figured out or realized that maybe she, either through his paranoia, just thought, oh, she needs this for protection against like timeline messer up people.
Right. Well, and again, Corky just showed up in Stargirl, and we know these books are kind of tied together.
Yeah.
In a way. So, and Corky was the one that was so associated with Batman during Flashpoint Beyond.
But what I was getting to, though, is like, if there is a threat that Batman's expecting, is it just in general he thinks that in case there's some sort of timey-wimey threat, she should be protected by having this next to her? Yeah. Or does he expect this specific threat? Does he know that there's a specific threat? And if it's not Batman, then did someone expect a specific threat would target her? And because we're dealing with time travel, it's entirely possible that someone made sure she had that in the past because they know for in the future that this guy's going to target her. So they made sure she always had it so that she would be safe until she's ready to face him head on, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and did Deaton have to wait X amount of time too? Because if she was always going to be a problem, did he have to wait for her to assume the mantle of Huntress before he can make his move for his ritual or whatever? Like, because he knows where she's been, right? Because she's been haunted by his presence, So it's one of those things. How come he didn't kill her as a child, right? He had opportunities.
That feels like the sort of thing that's going to be explained at some point. Yeah. That feels like the sort of thing where we might get an issue where we see why he jumps around these specific time points and what he's trying to do. Maybe he's chasing something through time that's leading through her life. I would be more. Yeah, I'm on the side more right now that it has to do with this ritual he's talking about of killing the Justice Society. There has to be specific moments in time that they're tied to in order for whatever. Because maybe I think this is more to do with like he's chasing her through time, and like I think there's probably going to be an explanation at some point to specify why it's these times in our life that he's appearing and showing up, and we'll maybe get it from either his perspective or we'll get an explanation on it. Because we're dealing with time travel, it just like you have to always remember that the order of the events that the main characters see things in is not necessarily the order that the villain's seeing things in, and that can affect how it plays out later on.
Right. Well, and so like clicking on Deaton on the on the DC wiki or the Wikia, right? He's part of a group called the Time Stealers, which is rival to the Time Masters and stuff. So if this is his legacy character, right? Because it's just Deaton. We don't know if it's per Deaton. Is this part of the Time Stealers trying to enact their plan too, right? In a Time Masters kind of way? Because we know from the Booster Gold stuff. Well, I know from Booster Gold, right, that Rip has a very controlled way of handling things in the timeline, right? So you'd think that Deaton has the same rules in order to get what he needs. It's one of those type of things.
Given what you just said about them being the rivals of the Time Masters, I would suggest that the Time Masters, or one of the Time Masters at the very least, are the ones that made sure Helena had this snow globe to make sure she couldn't be detected, and that she's kind of their secret weapon in this war they're fighting. If that's indeed what we're going to get to, is that there's a war between the Time Masters and the Time Stealers.
Right. I'm just saying, like, because of who they're associated with and because of John's, right? Um, just just the whole idea that the only time we saw Corky, right, before Stargirl was talking to Batman, right? In Flashpoint Beyond. So we know there that there's a tie between those instances. So that's what made me think of the Time Masters, that made me think of the Time Stealers, right? So it had just led to all these things. And again, I could be all completely wrong in all of this stuff. And that's why Geoff Johns is Geoff Johns and I'm not, and I'm talking about comic books.
No, I'm just saying, if this whole thing is like the Time Stealers are trying to like mess up time against the Time Masters, it would make sense to me that one of the Time Masters, possibly Corky specifically, is the one who made sure Helena was like hidden for whatever reason, because they think she's going to be the one who can like be the secret weapon or help them fight them or whatever it may be. But I don't think we have enough details yet to actually theorize about a lot of this. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the ride, right? Like, I love John's Justice Society for the whole legacy vibe and him playing with time right now, and us being so removed from the Justice Society for the last couple of years, and him kind of, I feel like him writing it in, with Helena interacting with them and just seeing them with Janen's art, right? Like, they look just so classic when we get to that reveal of the Justice Society, and it's making the Justice Society feel special, and if it takes this super, I don't say contrived because contrived sounds negative, but super planned out type of story with time elements and stuff to restore Justice Society to that, that status that I feel they should be at, I'm all along for the ride.
Yeah, just before the end of the issue, it kind of like recaps like the timeline a little bit by showing you 1940s, specifically the stuff in the swamp. It shows you early Catwoman 13 years ago, and then it says 8 years ago, and that looks like Johnsy's original JSA run from the 2000s. Yep. And then it says 1 year ago, and that shows you Khalid becoming Dr. Fate. So it kind of does kind of try to establish some of the timeline, and it's got this kind of cool little element where Helena's being like punched through them all, like she's sort of going across the page in the middle.
Yeah.
And then the last page is her waking up in what seems to be present day DCU with Deadman, Khalid, Dr. Fate, and Detective Chimp. So that's our cliffhanger, and we'll see where it picks up next time. So yeah, I guess we'll rate it.
Yeah. I going first or you going first?
You always go first.
I didn't know if you were gonna shake it up or not. I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
I don't know. I guess I'll agree with the 8.5, but I was conflicted because art's very good. Mikhail Yanin, obviously.
With a little bit of who's the other artist here? They were on the last one too. So that's when when Helena's a kid.
It changes, yeah.
Scott Collins. The Scott Collins art is also fairly good.